Hi guys, I'm Shmi and welcome to part 2 of my look back at the supercars I test drove in 2015. Now if you watched part 1 you'll already know that I'm currently on a skiing holiday here in Val d'Isère in the French Alps. This is a town I absolutely love and I've literally actually just come in from a day skiing up there in the hills. This morning it was a beautiful blue sky, absolutely lovely, but now it's started snowing. The weather's closed in and it's pretty windy and unpleasant up top. So I've just come down. You can see there's quite a lot of snow here, so hopefully at some point later in this ski season I might be able to get my Ferrari FF, now that it's got the Soto Zero winter tyres, down here to the Alps to have some fun with. In the meantime though, this is going to be all about the supercars that I test drove in 2015. So I did the first video after I did my hypercar recap where I'd driven 5 of the 6, in my opinion, top hypercars. Check that out if you haven't already. So after that I did my sort of part 1 of the supercars because I've driven some pretty cool cars in the last year, and obviously being here without supercars I don't exactly have much content to film for you guys, so I didn't really want to go without uploading anything. So I've got some videos just sort of reminding myself, having a sort of good bit of fun looking back at the last year. Now I say without really any supercars, but just before I started recording this, a blue BMW i8 actually drove up the road. I obviously didn't manage to catch it on my camera because I had my skis, my poles, all my gear, so I'm hoping I'm going to find it again. We'll see a little bit later on. Well, let's get started then, because this year, or last year now, because it's 2016 of course, was insane. I drove some really cool cars, and in the first part I highlighted some of them. Off the top of my head we had the 675 LT, GT3R S, Speciale. I can't even think what else, you'll have to go check the video. Today we're going to look at a couple more cars, and the first one I'm going to get us started with is Bentley's Continental GT3R. So special limited edition, very sporty version of the Continental GT, the V8 base engine. Let's take a look. So the Continental, the GT3R. It's 100 kilos lighter than the car on which it's based, which is the Continental V8 S. That car has a 4-litre twin-turbo V8. This car takes that same power unit, but takes it up from 521 horsepower to 572 horsepower. So less power than the W12 GT Speed and the W12 Super Sports models that have gone before, but the difference is of course the weight, because with that V8 power unit the car is down to 2,195 kilos, but bear in note of course that is still over 2 tons, 2.2 tons there for the weight. So a very comfortable seating position. Pull the door closed. There are soft closed doors as well, so if you don't close it entirely it will pull behind you. Then simply foot on the pedal, hit the start stop button. It comes into life. Now let me pop my seatbelt on. It's a very hot day here today, so I'm just going to manually lower the aircon just so it doesn't turn over from the exhaust sound. So we're in park, 8-speed gearbox, 8-speed automatic gearbox. Let's hear how it sounds. Here I am then, the GT3R, and we're on some pretty tight roads, which is not perhaps this car's natural habitat. It's built to be a GT car, of course, the original Continental GT, so it has those sort of long distance comfort characteristics you would expect, but a slightly more hardcore version of that. So firmer seats, more stiff ride, 45% stiffer at the front, in the 30% stiffer at the rear as well, but that doesn't seem to compromise it too much. It's still pretty comfortable riding on normal roads from my experience. You have a whole series of suspension settings you can adjust via a button here. It's on Bentley's air spring suspension, so you can go down towards comfort mode, and the full comfort mode significantly more relaxed. You have 2 middle stages between comfort and then a slightly sportier version of comfort before you get to full sport, and you can immediately probably tell that we're bumping significantly more in the sport mode, but the settings in the middle make a pretty happy sort of intermediary. So I would stick it with that one up from comfort. So slightly sportier, but not too hardcore. That's just amazing. Listen to that downshift. It's
spectacular. And then you can accelerate again. Even the noise slightly off the red line there is awesome. It sounds so good. I hope you can hear that on the camera properly. What a noise.
I rather enjoyed that drive with the GT3R, but next up we're going to be taking a look at the Aston Martin V12 Vantage S. Now this was a car I drove on a tour around Scotland, the first of the tours I ran celebrating the launch of the new SO Synergy fuels. Now you might know if you've been watching for a while that my father has an Aston Martin V12 Vantage manual car. I persuaded him to invest in it, his first supercar, about 2 years ago. It was turned out to be the right move. The car's gone up in value, which is just absolutely awesome, and he's been able to enjoy owning an Aston Martin. So that turned out to be a very sort of shrewd move. We're very pleased with it. But this, for me, was an opportunity to drive the V12 Vantage S. That is the car with the paddle shift, the sort of 7-speed semi-automated clutch, 6-speed I should say, 7-speed. I can't even remember. You'll have to watch the video, check out some of the clips, driving it around Scotland. Aston Martin V12 Vantage S, this Madagascar orange car. We've had a couple of days driving it now and it sounds phenomenal, looks amazing, and this is a beautiful spec on the car as well.
So the Vantage itself is actually now over 10 years old. When the first of this sort of current shape V8 Vantage came out, then there was the 4.7 facelift, we had the coupe and roadsters of all of the models, the V8 Vantage S, and in 2009 the V12 Vantage came out, which was the manual gearbox limited edition car, and it took the 6-litre V12 from the DB9 DBS, so the most powerful engine Aston Martin produced, and they put that in the smallest car they produced, the Vantage. So of course that's quite a winning formula if you like your exciting sports cars, especially ones that have a pretty good soundtrack to them. This car came out a little bit more recently, of course. The V12 Vantage S, it has the engine slightly revised and reworked from the Vanquish, so it's up to 565 brake horsepower, 573 PS, so it's a little bit more powerful, and of course it has a slightly more aggressive design to it as well, but still maintains some of the traits that were introduced on the V12 Vantage, like the quad carbon fibre vents on the front bonnet, and just more aggressive design to the rear diffuser. But this car has a new grille shape for increased airflow through the front, and just slightly more sporty looks, and especially in this colour, it looks fantastic. So one of the things that's different to the Vanquish, of course, is the gearbox. This car has the 7-speed semi-automated sport shift gearbox. Now this has come on a long way since the first V8 Vantages, but it's still effectively a manual gearbox with an automated controlled clutch, so it's nothing like a double clutch gearbox. And if you're driving it, let's say like right now, in an automated mode, fully automatic, it can get a little bit lurchy. You know, you have to still balance and fluctuate the throttle pedal to match the shifts, and if you don't know they're coming, that's a little bit difficult. So, you know, if you sort of put your foot down to downshift, well, it's not going to downshift because we've got a ton of torque, but there you get the sort of lurch on the upshift, which is a sort of funny feeling. Now, if you start using the paddles and drive it with the mentality of a manual car, that's where things get a little bit better, because then it sort of responds and relates to how you're trying to drive it. You know, you can sort of put in this sort of inputs and get that kind of engagement and feedback, and that's where it sort of is its own thing. It's certainly very rewarding when you're up towards the top end of the power band, nearer the red line, rather than when you're driving it around town, let's say. But what it doesn't have is like the lurching and juddering that some of the earlier sort of semi-auto gearboxes suffered quite horrendously from. Now,
right next to that trip with the V12 Vantage S, I then was in Portimao in Portugal, the Algarve circuit, with McLaren's new sports series, the 570S, and another opportunity, like with the 675 LT, to have a play with that car on both road and track. It's an incredibly significant car, both to McLaren and also to that sort of price point of supercars, and I have to say, it was really pretty impressive. So let's head over to Portugal. This is the car I'm going to be driving then, a Mantis Green 570S, which is of course a very lovely and personal colour to me, having had my 650S Spider in the exact same colour. This car's specced with a lot of the exterior carbon. You can see all of the carbon fibre around the aerodynamic parts on the doors, the side skirts, mirrors, the roof, and around the front as well. Let's start it up. Familiar sound from the twin-turbo V8, although the acoustics of this car have of course been quite significantly refined. It's amazing how different it actually does sound.
versus 12C, 650S, P1, etc. We've got an electronic handbrake which will automatically release as I start driving forwards. But here we go, off at the wheel of the new McLaren 570S. So naturally, to start us off, I've got everything in the sort of full, complete automatic settings, haven't played with anything. The active dynamics panel's not turned on. So we've got the new suspension system, which is of course a more traditional roll bar type setup rather than McLaren's hydraulic system that features in the P11 range, or the 12C and 650. 0 to 62, 3.2 seconds, 0 to 124 miles per hour, 200 kilometers is just 9.5 seconds, which is a pretty astonishingly quick car. I'm almost immediately going to turn on the active dynamics, where I've got it set for sport, and manual on the gear paddles, of course. Paddles, actually an interesting one, have the extended carbon fibre paddles in this car, with the same precog system, which is why you get that click on the gearbox, as you can sort of pre-select the gear. So a gentle pull on the paddle sort of activates the gearbox to be prepared to shift, so that when you do then pull it and you get that secondary click, you're immediately into the new gear. Of course, we've got the 7-speed gearbox, which is a fantastic piece of kit, lightning fast. The setup in this car seems pretty good on that too. Traditional McLaren fashion, it's very, very easy to place the car on the road, and part of that is because as you look out over the sort of very low front scuttle, the highest point is exactly above the contact point of the tyres, so you're looking sort of exactly where you're putting the wheels, which makes it very, very easy to point the car. And with this sort of power on tap and control and direct feeling from the steering, it's certainly easy to move at very brisk speeds along on public roads. I can imagine that translates incredibly well to being out on track too.
So when we start this next lap, I'm just going to go to track mode.
Okay, that's my cue to be careful.
Yeah, to be honest, you'll find the car is very safe still in this mode. It's not until we go to dynamic, which I'll do next lap. Start to open up the wheel now, using a bit more track, that's it. Can you notice the kick again in the gear shift there, Nick? Yeah. And the suspension down the straight.
Substantially further.
So soft on the brake, now we use it harder as you come down the hill, turn in, and then back on the power. Just for the whole car will start to liven up a bit more now and become a bit more fun. So when we come out of here, we'll keep our space here. Just jump on the power and be aware of it, but hit the power now. So nice and easy over the top. So again, when we come out, we can hit the power and just feel. So see now, the car's just now, obviously it just livens up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it livens up a lot.
Yeah.
Significantly more playful than the 12C ever allowed you to be.
Yeah, exactly, yes, yeah. We'll have a little play if you want to. That's it, hit the power. That's it, back up the power.
And we're back, and what an awesome drive. Although I'm not gonna lie, my first time going around Portimao, there is so much to take in. There are so many undulations and tricky corners and bits to remember. So a lot of this was kind of trying to learn the circuit and make sure I got all of that right, as well, of course, as trying to take in the car. On the topic of the car, what an unbelievable machine. And that's where I have really just taken in how many sort of different characters the car has. Because on the road, it was comfortable, usable is the term that's being used. What you sort of want and expect, but with all the looks and the drama, of course. But then you take it out onto the track, and when you turn traction control into the sporting, well, the dynamic ESC modes, and then ultimately in the hot lap I had at the end, in the traction fully off mode, it just lets you play around with such a sort of level of ease and controlled refinement that's just brilliant. So I'm not going to lie, I've really quite enjoyed that. That would be probably the perfect kind of daily accompanying car. Leaving the 570S then in Portugal, I'm going to head on to another car that has since found its way into my garage, and that is the Porsche Cayman GT4, a very special car. Now, the first time I actually got to drive a GT4, it was a cameras off affair. This was all sort of being a customer way back early in the year, I think perhaps early summer, so I sort of went along, did a drive. A lot of fun, because I had that car on order for a long time, kept it completely secret from you all while I was showing you the 675 LT. So the GT4 is an absolutely amazing car, and I had I've had many good drives in my car already. It's, I think at the time I'm filming this, it's about 2.5 months old, and I've already done about 4,000 miles in it, which is probably a little bit too much for a car of that sort of special nature, so I might tone it down a little bit from here. But with the IPE exhaust and the Martini wrap, it's amazing. But let's just talk GT4 in general from the early days. This road is literally about to be insane. Here goes then a little slice of heaven coming right up. Crackles, manual upshift, dry bit of road. I've got to be quite careful because there are some sketchy, slightly slippy bits, and I am obviously on tyres that are best suited to the absolute dry right now. But the lateral grip around corners in this car is the thing I love the most. This is how much it just sticks and stays planted. And then the rev match downshifts when you've got the sport mode enabled. Down into first, it's just insane. Lots of stuff on the road here, I've got to be careful. Wind out to the red line. Oh my gosh, this road is going to be insane. Twist it round. Feel the traction doing its thing. I don't want to turn it off just in case. Better not be a hero today. I can see a lot of people have had some sideways fun on this road. There are a serious amount of tyre marks on the corners. It's quite funny actually. It's clearly been well used for the purpose. I don't even know what this part of the road is called. It's the part of the D2 just near Marseille. To me, it's P1 F1 road because that's the first time I saw it in the Evo video. Henry Catchpole driving the two matching cars in the same colours, both the P1 and the F1. That just must have been the most amazing day ever. I mean, F1 is at the top of my bucket list. I don't know if I'll ever get an opportunity to drive one, but this car on this road is a very good combination. It's just the right amount of agility, not too much power so I can use it out of the corners. Oh wow, oh wow. Right, I'm going to shut up and just drive for a bit. GT4 then, big smiles all around. I truly love my car. It's absolutely amazing, so much fun to drive. For the fifth and final car of the second part of this series, we're going to head back into the south of France for the new R8, the Audi R8 V10 Plus, the all-new model, 610 horsepower, and again, a car that's incredibly good, built for a purpose, and it serves that purpose very well. So we started off near Circuit Paul Ricard in the south of France. But a little bit about the car then. So the new R8 Plus, whole new model. Obviously there was the R8 before, which was facelifted to include the S-tronic gearbox, which this car maintains, so the 7-speed dual clutch. It has the familiar 5.2 litre V10 engine, now with 610 PS, 550 Newton meters of torque. One of the new features, of course, is Audi's laser lights. They're full LED adaptive headlights, new technology, very trick. From a sort of design perspective, it's sort of significantly beefed up and more aggressive. So you have a slightly more pointed front grille with this sort of front leading edge here. It comes out to a sort of point across the front just above the number plate. The grille itself is wider, slightly more angular in design around the sides. Under the headlights, you have that new sort of vented area for cooling through the front. Again, more aggressive in design than before. This car has a lot of carbon fibre, so we've got the door mirrors, we've got the side blades in two parts, the rear wing, it's got the carbon fibre engine bay that I'll get to in a moment. One sort of very big design point when I'm thinking about it that's changed from the previous generation is the movement of this sort of from one big side bay piece into the two separate parts. At the top with a cooling vent, and of course the larger vent down at the side. For bringing in air towards the engine there. So that sort of breaks up the design significantly better. I like it personally. I always found the side blade a little large. Some people will, I think, miss out or feel that they're missing what the R8 used to have. A quick look at the interior, where things have changed quite significantly versus the previous version. And the biggest thing you'll notice is this full new display. Full digital display on the dashboard that you can change so much on. Like I say, there's too much to talk about right at this second, so I will run through all of that in due course. Steering wheel itself now has a number of buttons that can sort of do different things. You've got the start-stop button here, you've got the drive select mode, so you don't have to take your hands away
to change the different sort of suspension, dynamic steering, sports exhaust button. All those sort of settings you can now do with your hands from the steering wheel. Then you've got the controls to go through what you're looking at on the display. Driving out of the circuit then, and this is of course quite a big deal. This is the new R8 Plus. It was widely anticipated before it came out, and of course the R8 is such an important car for Audi. Certainly from my perspective, when the previous generation came out, it was such a sort of introduction of a flagship that changed the sort of look and appeal of the brand in quite a big way. You know, that car 2006, 2007, nearly a decade ago now, really made a statement of intent with Audi releasing an incredibly powerful mid-engine supercar. We had the V8, of course, before the V10 came out a year or two later, but that was when the performance really came about. This time around, we've got the V10 from the word go, so we've got all of that performance, and this thing certainly packs a pretty powerful punch. It's right up there with the supercars that you expect it to be. In fact, this is where it's quite interesting how much of this car is shared with the Lamborghini Huracan. Now, they're both 610 horsepower, they're both very similar, same engine, same sort of chassis setup, of course, massive numbers of part sharing, I'm sure, but this car is nearly £50,000 cheaper. Obviously it doesn't have the Lamborghini badge, it doesn't have the necessarily looks of the Lamborghini, but it's an Audi and a lot of people really like that. It's sort of slightly more subtle, less in your face, and I can imagine when I get to sort of pushing on a little bit better, it probably drives really quite well. Certainly that's what I'm expecting. In this kind of fully automated mode where I'm literally just pootling along down the road here, gearbox is automatic, exhaust valves are closed, everything's in automatic with the drive select settings, so comfort suspension, comfort steering, nothing fancy set up. It's really quite nice, you know. I'm just out for a Sunday stroll. Well, it's not a Sunday, but same story. Brilliantly, I'm on some lovely smooth tarmac here. Very little noise from the outside. Just by way of a test, I'm going to press the exhaust button. Hear it make a difference. There we go, you can immediately hear more of the V10 engine noise coming through. We're in 6th gear at sort of 40 miles an hour, very standard. There we go, crackle, crackle, crackle. It's awesome, that's for sure. I'm actually really enjoying this. It's a very nice car to just jump in and drive, there's no question about it. Even in the sort of sportier setting now, it's a very nice car for this purpose. And this is a very nice road to be driving on, that's for sure. So I can feel also, of course, that it's firmed up slightly. The steering's a little bit tighter. And that's all part of the sort of optional package you can have with Drive Select for the dynamic steering and the suspension. I'm going to go onto the pedals just to make some slightly more antisocial noise, I suppose. Very nice and effortless kind of power. It just pulls away, just keeps going delightfully, exactly what you want. So do remember that this is literally my first impressions drive. I don't have long with this car today, so I'm just sort of playing around, getting a feel for it, seeing what it's like. I'm going to start pressing some buttons, I think, actually, and I've got a little bit of traffic in front of me. So the view button is the big one, splits the display out, then you get a whole lot more information to look at. You can cycle through your nav, your radio, your telephone, your notes, all sorts of different things. That is your phone. And obviously all the trip information stuff. It's a beautiful display, no question about that. Go again. Cars like this is that I just end up wanting to upshift and downshift them all the time just to hear the exhaust noises, just because you want to get that like lift off, pop pop, crackle bang, or you want to get the upshift noises, which I just can't get over how fast that is. Unnecessarily down to second.
There we have it, another 5 pretty incredible cars that I got to drive during 2015. The Bentley Continental GT3R, the Aston Martin V12 Vantage S, the McLaren 570 S, Porsche Cayman GT4, and the new Audi R8 V10 Plus. And that brings me back to where I am right now, in the sort of town centre square, in the centre of Val d'Isère in France, where there's actually some blue sky poking through up there in the mountains. This is a really awesome ski resort, as I'm sure any of you out there who ski regularly or know much about skiing will know. So we're having a lot of fun this week, and there is an awful lot of snow around. yeah, unfortunately, we seem to be having some blue skies in the day. So I'm sure there are many of you who do ski. If you're a skier, comment down below. Let me know. Let me know where you ski. I'd be interested to know how many of you guys are out there are big skiers. As I said in the first video, I was a massive, massive keen skier before I had a big injury a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's nice being back here enjoying the snow. I try and go once or twice every year to get some skiing in. But there we go, a second look. I'm going to move on, and there's going to be one more because I drove a few more cars I want to tell you about, but it's been a pretty good year. That's it for now. I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers.
This is so special. This is so special.